Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus A330 pilot and welcome to the Caribbean. World update number 16 has just arrived and this brings a lot of Caribbean places to our simulator. Not only does it include a lot of good point of interest, I can really recommend watching that trailer from Microsoft if you haven't done it yet, but at the size of about 22 gigabytes of data, it comes for free, including a lot of major Caribbean airports as well. For example, we're in Jamaica right now at Sangster International Airport, and just look at the level of detail that we've got on the airport over here, and look how beautiful it sits on the coastline of the Caribbean Ocean. Really a much recommendable area to fly in, and it all comes to your simulator for free. Another great airport that's included is Puerto Plata, which is one of my favorite in terms of approaches available in the Caribbean, both in the real world as well as in the simulator, and that is where we're going to fly today, flying my most favorite approach. Now, let's explore the airport for a little bit, and we are going to start by having a quick look into the level of detail that went into many of these places before we are going to have a look into what we're going to fly today. So this is how the general gate area looks like in the Sangster Airport over here, and if we just move into the terminal for a bit, this is what we get. Now, the airports, as always, crafted by Gaia Simulations, who are doing an awesome job creating airports for Microsoft in pretty much all world updates. Now, a little bit of a letdown, though. We only have the 3D terminal interiors where they are immediately visible from the gate, for example. If we go to an area next to it, you can see over here there isn't anything. We can't even enter the terminals. It just bumps the camera out again. And the same is the case over here, for example, where you are not immediately in front of a gate, but then when you move immediately onto the area of the gates again, so over here, where you could basically look into from the cockpit of your aircraft, all of a sudden you do have 3D terminal interiors once again. So like that, they're probably saving performance while at the same point in time optimizing what you can see in the airports. All right, so that much about a little look around over here. Now, the last thing that we can search for is the tower, and that's located just over here. And we will find out that, unfortunately, we do have a 3D interior in here, but we can't enter it. It's bumping us up. Now, that is not the case on all airports. When I'm going to show you Puerto Plata, you will be positively surprised by how different that actually looks. All right, so that much for what the level of detail at the airport looks like. Overall, just like with any world update, those airports do look like they are pretty much designed for, well, pay-wear quality standards, which they absolutely are. Now let's quickly head over to the actual tower, not just the ground or apron control. And over here you can see it's the same thing. We can't really enter it, unfortunately. Even though looking from the outside we can see that there is some level of detail available in there. That's what it looks like. Alright, so from the air traffic controller's point of view, let's move directly to the pilot's point of view, and we are going to enter our Airbus A320. Now, it was a little bit hard to find a real-world flights for this particular route of flight, so I had to trick a little bit, basically going from Jamaica over to the Dominican Republic. There is no scheduled flight between these two airports. However, there used to be one in 2022, operated by the back then WinWings Discover German leisure carrier, with Airbus A330 before it would fly on from Puerto Plata to Frankfurt Airport. Now, due to the lack of an A330, I decided I'm going to go for the A320 instead of the same airline. So let's head straight into the cockpit, and we are going to go for this beautiful Caribbean flight. Now, throughout the flight, I'm going to give you a couple of details of what it's like to fly in the Caribbean in the real world, and some of the things that we got to be aware of. Alright, so welcome aboard. Let's go directly over into our favorite area of the aircraft, the cockpit, of course. And we're going to take a seat in the captain's seat of our beloved Airbus. Now, generally, Caribbean, very hot, very moist area, so we want to get the APU running as soon as possible. Normally, when you take over an airplane, it would be parked with the APU running for air conditioning anyway, for all the cleaning stuff and so on. So that is general operating conditions you would find in the Caribbean. All right, so external power can come on, and then we can give the airplane a few moments to power up before we are going to continue with the APU fire test. In the meantime, let's go ahead and fetch our flight from SimBrief. Again, using real-world flight number, only in the real world it would be operated by an A330 rather than an A320. But that's a concession we gotta make for the sim. Alright, very good. Then let's go ahead and have a look at our SimBrief flight plan, make a fuel decision. I'm going to tell you a couple of details of what's important to know about flying in the Caribbean when deciding on fuel. So let's go right over here, and looking down we can see for our destination Puerto Plata we've got calm winds and temperature of 21 degrees. Now I'm recording this one not at the time that you see shown over here, but at around about 8 Zulu in the morning, so it's like deep in the night in the Caribbean right now, so temperature is 21 degrees overnight. Perfect. Right, overall, some light rain forecast, and looking at the other reports, we got showers in the vicinity, stuff like that. So, overall, good conditions here. I don't see any reason to take much extra fuel. So, if we have a look into the fuel plan down here, we can see 6,500 takeoff fuel plus 200 taxi, 6,700 kilograms. I would say with that, we are absolutely safe as well. Look at that, they gave us an alternate that's really far away there, 50-minute flight time, so let's take 6,700 and that's going to be it then. Okay, cool, so let's go for it then. Mass and balance, and what do they say by default? 6.6, we'll take a little bit more. We need to keep in mind the APU as well, but half an hour is going to use roughly 100 kilograms, so we'll be legal like this with 6.7. Okay, cool, then let's go ahead and load the aircraft. I am going to go for the fast time load over here, and while that's in progress, let's continue with our preliminary cockpit preparation, doing the APU fire test. Alright, and here we go. And with that now completed, let's go ahead and start up the APU. Okay, so APU coming up, then we can go ahead and move the nav, or the IRS selectors to nav, 1, 2, 3. Set the cockpit lights as needed, and I do believe I'm just going to leave them where they are right now, because that should work rather well. Okay, then we can go ahead with our EFB initialization and start with a little bit of basic stuff there. EFBs are on. We already collected the flight plan, so that stuff is done. But let's go ahead and do the flight plan uplink real quick. Make sure that everything initializes down here. Okay, data request, and here it comes, Ocean 6, an hour and 4 flight time. Right, and then we can have a look into the FMGC as well, so A320 CFM engines with current database as of this recording. Alright, so, initialize request, perfect. So then, aircraft acceptance and technical status. We do the recall, keep it hold for 3 seconds. That is going to provide you with a complete recall, compared to just press it for a short moment. It's just going to recall anything active. Do it for longer and it's going to recall the saved stuff as well. Right, APU is available. Let's get the bleed running. That is going to be a big relief to the cabin crew and everybody still working on board the aircraft. Alright then, so right now the weather request unfortunately is broken in the Phoenix, so I will have to just work off the weather that we can get from the EFB over here. But if we just retrieve the latest weather here, 160 at 6, few clouds, 22 degrees, 1015. Now, whenever I get a QNH, I always put it in immediately because that's pretty much the most important thing there. Okay, so something worth mentioning is that in many places Caribbean, they give you the QNH in hectopascals on META, but on the radio they're going to give it to you in inches. For that reason, let's switch over to inches, and then we'll stick with 2997. Now, all I can say is that in any place in the Caribbean where I have flown to, that's currently 5 different airports, but not this one. So it might be hectopascals, it might be inches, but I'm rather positive it would be inches over here, even though the published weather comes in hectopascals. Okay, so then let's go ahead and grab our charts, and then we are going to do the preliminary performance data here. So we can just import our route directly from SimBrief. Sangster International ground chart. We want this one, I believe. Yes, we do. And we want the parking stance and coordinates. Right then, for the departure chart, let's have a very quick look into which SID we're actually expecting, if we expect one at all. And it's via Elutu 5 departure. Okay. So something that you see quite a bit in the Caribbean as well is that they don't name the SIDs necessarily after the end waypoint, like you're used to from most places in either the US, where you've still got a transition, or in Europe straight away. But okay, so this is pretty much what we got. Typical Caribbean departure route, you can see you proceed straight out to a certain waypoint, and then from there you just fly direct to wherever you want to go, because the airspace really isn't that busy over here. Now, in some of the larger places like Punta Cana or Cancun, yes, I do count Cancun for the Caribbean, even though it's not included in the World Update, but I still count it as that. So in some of the larger places, you have a little bit of traffic, but most airports, say La Romana, for example, or St. Martin, you just fly in there. You gotta watch for a bit of VFR traffic, but IFR traffic, not that many. Really not that many aircraft. Okay, then let's go for our performance. So for the departure, we got runway 07 or 25. Doesn't really seem to matter, so let's go with 07. We'll just synchronize that stuff. We'll keep the packs on, because otherwise it can just get very hot on the plane very quickly. So let's do the preliminary performance over here, see what we're gonna get. And we don't have any intersection anyway. Okay, so performance limited weight, that one's rather important here, making sure that we're actually able to take off, because depending on the actual conditions, if you sit there in 35 degrees, you've got a very heavy aircraft for a long-haul flight, you might have some performance limits in place due to runway length, if you think about airports like St. Martin, and obviously temperature conditions as well. Right, excellent. So that is our preliminary EFB setup done. So let's go ahead then and quickly check the oxygen. 1800 psi looking good. Hydraulic quantities looking good. Engine oil quantity is looking good as well. Flap lever agrees with the flap position. Speed brake up retracted. Then we can quickly release the park and brake. Press the brakes. Make sure that works, and then we can set the park brake again. Alright, excellent. Cool, and with that, we are pretty much done with our preliminary cockpit preparation. The colleague can head out for the walk around now, and we start with our actual cockpit preparation, which is basically the standard flow that many flight simulators tend to do as the first thing when they get on board the aircraft. But technically speaking, you just saw we could fill like 5 or 6 minutes just doing the preliminary procedures. So what's the fueling doing? 6,700 is completed. The ELEG page. Oh man, the 320 Ecam is different from the A330. For that reason, I sometimes really start searching for stuff that I normally would know exactly where it is, but in the sim just doesn't always appear at that position because it's obviously slightly different aircraft. Alrighty. Then on a flight like this, I wouldn't be surprised if I actually had some pets on board. So let's go ahead and turn on the aft cargo heater. We'll just put it to middle position somewhere, around about 15 degrees. And that's going to be easy going then. Okay, so what I sometimes find funny is if you really take the time to do all the procedures in the Airbus properly, then you sometimes really take like 15-20 minutes to get everything set up, while if you do what a lot of flight simulators would be doing, which is just extinguish all the white lights, it can sometimes be so much quicker. Okay, so we are basically done with our scan of the flight deck. So let's start with the FMS now. We're going to be Ocean 6, cost index 10, cruising flight level 370. And then let's go ahead with our departure. So we set runway 07 as our preferred runway, Ilu-25 departure. And let's see where that transition is going to lead us. So boarding complete, excellent. So Almos is our first waypoint. And here we go, towards Almos. Awesome. Then for the arrival, we're going to fly the RNAV approach onto runway 25. Oh, sorry, we're going to fly the RNAV approach on runway 08, of course. And if we take a look at the different procedures that we have available there, we might just as well grab our arrival charts at this point. Okay, so for the star, which one do we have? Arriving from Bepal, so it's going to be some Bepal arrival. That's a good thing, at least the arrival stars are usually rather obvious in the Caribbean. Okay, so on of arrivals, runway 08. That's probably the chart we are looking for. Yes, it is. So down here we got one from Bepal, leading towards BPAT, which is on the extended center line. Arriving right over the mountains of the Dominican Republic, which is a superb arrival in terms of the visuals. Okay, so Bepal to Earth arrival then, 4. Let's see which approach it's going to be. So Anna Zulu 08, that sounds about familiar, and it is. Alright, so it's going to be the Anna Zulu approach runway 08. Now, the approach into the other direction is likewise beautiful over the land, but I want to fly the one coming in over the mountains today because that is really a spectacular arrival. Okay, so that stuff is set. Then let's go ahead with our engine out procedures. So we'll just make it a PVD point over here. I can't be bothered inserting the whole thing. So that's going to be MKJS08/073/25. Not in database, yeah. That, I probably did a typo. MK Juliet Sierra. Oh, of course, it's a 07. It's not a 08. Yeah, then it can't have that in database. So the thing did the correct thing here. Okay, PBG, pick up a hold, and that's going to be over the water anyway. So 3,000 feet is going to keep us safe over there at the PBD. Okay, then immediate return, MKJS, new destination, thank you, and the approach. Well, the wind is coming exactly cross, so we can simply make a procedure turn and then return for the arms approach runway 25. That is going to make our life easiest. Okay, so an extended center line coming in over here as well, 073, and then we'll put the PBD 01 in here as well, because that is just a way to mark it for the engine out procedures. Okay, with that our routing is basically in. Now in the real world we would go ahead and take the pilot's route, store the active flight plan, and then you would cross-check that everything is correct. But in the Phoenix, as you can see, that feature isn't working correctly, so still got direct Almos, the SID is missing. Then you got a couple en route waypoint here, but as you can see the entire star and approach is missing from here as well. So unfortunately, while that would be something we would do in the real world, in the Phoenix it doesn't work correctly, which is a pity, but so be it. Okay, then let's continue with our data entry. Moving over to the init B page, zero fuel 59.2 is what we've got. And whenever you don't know the CG, you just enter 25. And the block fuel 6.7. And finally, when we move down to the flat plan fuel, 2.3 for the diversion, 1.1 for the alternate. So 2.3, 1.1. And don't worry if the Airbus tells you a little bit of a negative extra fuel there. The prediction isn't accurate on the ground. And we do have a tailwind 45 knots, so we can enter that as well. That's probably going to make a difference over 100 kilos or so. No, not even. Oh, even 300 kilos, okay. So this now tells us we're legal, but even if this was too low, if the flight plan you received from Simbri tells you that you are good to go, then you basically can go. because once you're in the air, the Airbus is going to recalculate, and then you're going to get good numbers. Okay, so flaps 1 takeoff at 63 degrees flex temperature. 163, and our takeoff speed's 140, 140, 143. And here we go. Reduction acceleration, engine out acceleration, that's going to be 1500 above ground. Apart from that, that all looks correct. We don't need anything on here. Very good. Then let's go ahead and cross-check our data to make sure that everything we just entered is actually correct. So we'll start with our departure. And have a quick look at the sit down here. Okay, so one constraint 20-mile ring is, or 20-mile range is usually pretty good for this. So we proceed on the runway track towards Otezu. That one is an overfly waypoint, as we can see over here, and we have it as an overfly coded in here as well, which you can see by the triangle. That's a left-hand turn towards Ilutu above 1300, and we can see we've got Ilutu above 1300 in here. Okay, thereafter, right-hand turn towards almost above 5000, and from there we join the airway. So that's a right-hand turn towards almost above 5000 and onto the airway. Initial climb clearance usually received by air traffic control in the Caribbean, but let's see if we've got anything on the chart. In some places there is something published, in others there's not. What you often have is that they clear you immediately to your cruise altitude when you receive your IFR clearance. But when they give you takeoff clearance, they're going to tell you stop the climb at some lower altitude. So that's, for example, the case when you fly to Cancun or in a couple others as well. During the IFR clearance, they say climb flight level 370, and then during takeoff clearance, they say climb 5000 and clear for takeoff. So that's just something for us to keep in mind here. But we're just going to go with 5000 for now, and then we'll see about it later on. Okay, so we did just receive a company message here. Load sheet. And that's the final load sheet already. Excellent. Alright, cool. So I am just going to go onto the init page over here, and then we'll take the load sheet over here so that we can actually work off it a bit nicer. So we've got 59.2, which is exactly what we expected, and 30.6. In the real world, you would do this silent. You would just enter it, and then the pilot monitor would cross-check it. So 29.0 for the takeoff CG, and 65.7, 65.7, 159 plus 4. Man, I feel sorry for the cabin crew. 4 children is a lot. They will have quite a bit of work to do today. Okay, so with that, our takeoff weight remains basically unchanged. The only thing we gotta check real quick is the trim, but you can either get that from here, recalculate it, but in the real world, what you would do is you know the CG, it's here on the load sheet, 29.0, and the trim would actually be written on the load sheet as well, but 29.0 we can always just look in here and then see like where's the 29, somewhere down here, so down trim 0.2, something the likes, and that's gonna be it. In the real world, take it from the load sheet. In the sim, works like this as well. Right, awesome. So we are basically done down here. Then I would say let's go ahead with our departure briefing. Okay, so Sandstone runway 07, and we've got the Ilutu 5 departure towards Almos, climbing probably 5000. MSA-wise, there's a couple of hills over the island, but we're heading out to the water, so we are going to be safe in 3000. Actual fuel and time is basically 0. Alright, I do agree. Hotspots for the taxi, we don't have any. Stop water for eject takeoff is plenty available. Unfortunately, the EFB doesn't calculate it over here. Engine outset on the runway track, climbing 3000 feet, 25 miles out, and then they're going to return either runway 25 or runway 07. The wind is immediately crossed. Immediate return, we've got Sangster as our best option over here, which has a 2,600 meters runway. We are under the max landing weight, so we can return immediately if we need to. Nothing special, nothing non-standard. Do you see any threats for the departure? Nope. Me neither. Then we can go ahead with the cockpit preparation checklist. Gear pins and covers removed. Fuel quantity. That's 6,660 kilogram balanced. Seatbelts on, 8 years. Nav, barrel ref, QNH 29090. Seven. Cockpit preparation checklist complete. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard our Discover Airlines Flight 6 to Frankfurt via Puerto Plata. We have just finished our boarding and we're loading the last couple of bags, so we will start a pushback in a few moments. Our first leg towards Puerto Plata is going to take approximately an hour, and thereafter we expect about 9 hours flight time onwards to Frankfurt. We would like to thank you very much for being our guests today. Sit back, relax, enjoy the flight, and if there is anything we can do for you to make the flight more enjoyable, please don't hesitate to ask any of our cabin crew. Thank you very much and welcome aboard. Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, einen wunderschönen guten Tag auf dem Cockpit. Hier spricht Ihr Kapitän. Herzlich willkommen an Bord Ihres Discover Airlines Fluges nach Frankfurt. Flugzeit zuerst etwa 1 Stunde nach Puerto Plata und dann von da nochmal weitere 9 Stunden bis nach Frankfurt. Wir bedanken uns herzlich, dass Sie unsere Gäste sind, wünschen Ihnen einen schönen Aufenthalt und wenn es etwas gibt, womit wir den Flug schöner gestalten können, zögern Sie bitte nicht, sich an unsere Flugbegleiter zu wenden. Vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit. Alright, excellent. So we are done with that. Then let's get rid of the external power, get rid of all the ground equipment, and then we can start our pushback. Okay, so ground services. So everything down here is closed, GPU can go, and the park and brake is set, so the shocks can be disconnected as well. They already removed the jetway, then let's go ahead and grab a tuck. And grab the tuck. Please don't tell me we don't have pushback tuck over here. Let's have a look. Well, there is one. Even though that is probably enough, seeing that it collided with a jetway. But okay. Well, so be it. If they don't want to give us a tuck, then we'll just have to do without. And maybe connect it while the chocks are still in place? No. That's interesting. Or is it because of the toggle jetway option? No. Okay. Well, in that case, I really don't know. We'll just leave it as it is, honestly. I believe the pushback function should still work. Okay, let's go for pushback then. Before start checklist, park and brake. Set takeoff speeds and thrust. 140, 140, 143, flex 63. Windows. Closed. Beacon. On. Before start checklist complete. Okay then, so brake is released. Then we just go for it over here. Look at that, all of a sudden the talk show's connected. But that looks interesting down there. Okay, no further comment on that. Let's go ahead and start our engines. Engine 2 start. I've got to use a little bit of the outside view here in order to steer my pushback properly. That looks interesting with the tuck, by the way. Welcome to Microsoft Flight Simulator. Oh, here it is. Well, better late than never, huh? Somehow it looks interesting to see the Discover A320 in the Caribbean, though. But, well, I promise as soon as we've got an A330, we're going to do this flight again, and then do it properly with the correct equipment. But I thought, better something halfway realistic, by at least using a realistic flight number and stuff like that, and a company that actually flew that flight, rather than use, you know, something. Okay, cool. So, Let's see where they got to start turning us then. Probably should have turned right over here and not pushed all the way to the back. Well, that's the issue of not having a proper pushback tool over here. But well, that is fine. So you can start turning the nose to the right, please. No, the other right. Thank you. And then engine 1 start. Doesn't look like the best pushback, but I'm honest with you. I basically almost never use this Phoenix system, but hey, so be it. But it really doesn't look too bad. That looks pretty good. I'm surprised by myself. Never expected this. Okay, stop the pushback. Park and brake set. And we've got 2 good starts. Then let's go for it. Okay, so the tuck is going. Let's say the hand signal is received as well. I'm rather sure there's not going to be one in the sim. After start checklist. Anti-ice. Off. Ecom status. Checked. Pitch trim. 29%. Rudder trim. Neutral. After start checklist complete. Flight control check. Full up. Full down. Neutral. Full left. Full right. Neutral. Rudder. Full left, full right, neutral. Okay, taxi. So, clear left side, clear right side. Alright, we're basically going along an apron, so I would say 15 knots is the maximum we need here. And generally the cabin needs a little bit of time to get ready as well, so if we just go slow, then we should hopefully have everything ready in time for when we reach the runway without having to stop over there. Alright, good. So let's do the review of the takeoff briefing, and basically I think nothing has changed, so we can leave everything exactly as we briefed it. Okay. So just waiting for the cabin down there, which is kind of what we expected. So let me just make sure I don't mess the taxi up, but I do believe we can just go straight to the very end. Yes, we can. All the way to the end, and then by half out, we're going to line up. As soon as the cabin reads checked, we can start the taxi checklist. But basically, we need a completed ECAM in order to actually start running that. At least that's the Airbus SOP. I'm not saying that that we would never say like, okay, just give me that checklist and let's complete it now. Especially when traffic control wants you to line up on the runway, which rather often happens here in the Caribbean. Even if you're not ready, they know there is no traffic flying around, so they just tell you, okay, line up and wait and report ready. And when that happens, basically, personally, I would read the checklist, because even though the controller says there is nobody flying around, I always am a little bit doubtful there, and I want to be ready as soon as possible when we actually reach the, when we're actually on the runway. Yep, that was a little bit harsh of a braking maneuver there. I'm using my mobile hardware right now and recording this one while I'm sitting in a hotel after spending a standby day. Later today, I'm going to go flying in the real world. So I'm kind of recording this on my laptop in the hotel, and yes, you will get a separate video on that laptop pretty soon. Okay, so land from A07, and clear left side, clear right side. Now, obviously, we need to slightly modify the SOP, because normally when we do the lineup, we would tell the cabin crew to prepare for departure and stuff like that. But obviously now, we need to be a little bit more careful there, because we have done parts of the lineup procedure, but we can't do it completely since we can't tell the cabin to prepare for departure yet, when they're still standing in the cabin doing their stuff. Otherwise, things would go southbound very quickly in the cabin. Alright. So, runway 07, here we are. Well done, park brake is set. What's the cabin doing? Still not there. I mean, yes, I know that some of you will write in the comments, so just give them a ding and then they will be ready. But in the real world, that is really not how you do it. In the real world, you just wait until they are ready, because they know themselves at which pace they can work, and they know themselves when they can be ready. If you rush them, things are just going to go southbound. So that's why I'm not a big fan of all this. Yeah, in order to get the cabin checked, you gotta ding the cabin. You know, of course it works in the sim, but in the real world it doesn't. And in the real world it will cause trouble very quickly if you do that. But, well, actually I do kind of like it how Phoenix programmed this, that here we go. So we just had to wait a little bit, and then eventually they do get ready, at more or less a realistic timing as well. Okay, taxi checklist. Fleet controls, checked. Setting. Conf 1 plus F. Radar predictive wind shear. On and auto. Engine starts L. Norm, econ memo, takeoff no blue. Taxi checklist complete. Cabin crew prepare for departure. Right, so the packs were on. Lineup checklist. Takeoff runway. 07 full length. TCAS. Tara, packs 1 and 2, on, lineup checklist complete. Right, so runway 07 cleared for takeoff. Brake off, timer on. Let's give it a try. Step light. And flight 63 SS runway order first blue. A little bit of wind there pushing us into the wrong direction, but that's fine. Okay, 110 knots. Was a little bit busy there steering, which is why I missed the 100 call. Happens. V1 rotate. Positive climb, gear up, left, check. You're a little bit laggy right now, not sure why that is. Climb, auto thrust. Alright, then let's put the autopilot on, and we are going to enjoy the view a little bit. I mean, look at that. That's pretty beautiful, isn't it? That's really, really beautiful, actually. So that's what it looks like. World Update Carribean. Still waiting to reach the speed where we can retract the flaps, so we might as well just take a little further look around the island. So this is the area that they could cover over here. So that's looking pretty cool, isn't it? Okay, flap 0. Let's turn those lights a little bit up on the overhead. Okay, and here we go. So we do have the 1300 restriction over here. We'll make 5000 in a couple of moments as well. Then let's go ahead for a continuous climb. Something like, I don't know, 15,000 or so. Transition altitudes, depending on where you are, can either be really high or really low. So, especially if you're in the places mostly frequented by the US, or especially in the northern Caribbean, I should say, then you typically have rather high transition altitudes, like 15,000, 10,000, 18,000, even 19,500 in some cases. And if you're in the Dutch-dominated part of the Caribbean, say for example Bonaire or Curaçao and those kind of airports, then you often have very low transition altitudes in the region of about 3,000 feet. So, depending on where you are, some huge differences, so it's always worth checking. For our departure, it's 17,000, so we don't need to worry about any of that. Alright, so just flying along the coast over here, which looks really beautiful. They have certainly done an awesome job over here. Now, what I'm kind of missing here would be some nice coral reefs and stuff like that, but I'm sure we're going to find someone to get over to the Dominican Republic and have a look at the area over there. But in general, really nice looking scenery here, and all I can say is the Caribbean is an awesome place to fly. Really an awesome place. Not only because there's lovely scenery, lovely beaches, and lovely ocean, but also because there is, little traffic. Traffic control generally doesn't impose any noise restrictions. Also, usually on many charts you just find a note, don't overfly cities below 1,500 feet, and you're like, okay. In Germany it would often be something like, don't overfly them below 5,000 feet. So that is pretty cool, and then you can just do your visual approaches in there, and nobody is going to prevent you from doing visuals. As soon as you see the field, you tell them, you fly them. That's just amazing. That's just really amazing. Alright, looks like it's pitching down a bit, so we're reaching 10,000 indeed. You could leave the lights on till the transition altitude. Now, some do, some don't. At least in our OMA, it doesn't say for the climb that you need to do it, but only for the descent. Alright, I would say it's probably gonna stay smooth here, so let's go ahead and release our passengers. Now it's basically one long straight line. Okay, clear and copy. So let's see, optimum 350, cruising 370, and maximum 378, but we basically know that in the A320 the real optimum is usually some 2,000 feet above the indicated optimum, so that is actually what I do expect here, and that is what I can quickly cross-check on my real-world iPad. Unfortunately, in the real world you would have a software on your EFB that would be able to recalculate those numbers, and you would use that in order to determine if you can if you can climb to the FMC optimum, or if you can climb higher, stuff like that. Unfortunately, in the simulator we don't have that, so normally what I do is 2,000 feet above the FMS optimum in the A320 is working rather well. So 370 is going to be our cruising level. So, it is an hour and a bit flight, so what I do suppose is that we are just going to go and turn on a little bit of a time acceleration there in order to make it a little bit quicker. So, sim rate 2x. and this actually works rather well in the Phoenix. So the good thing about flying the sim at 2x is it still looks rather realistic. So if you look at that, you know, you don't really notice too much that you've got an acceleration on there, but the airplane is, or the Phoenix is still able to cope with it rather nicely. I normally do this as well when I'm recording these longer flights, like I've got one upcoming from, imagine Singapore to Hong Kong in the A321, that's obviously where you just did, you know, stuff like that. Right, so there is a little bit of a coral reef down there. Let's zoom in a little bit. I want to see that in some detail. And that looks pretty good. Actually looks pretty much like they do look in the Caribbean. Even though it would be rather nice if the surrounding water had a little bit of a matching color. You know, right now the water is rather dark bluish. Normally in the Caribbean it looks a little bit different. Like the reefs are visible, but the water surrounding it are a little bit of a similar color. But tell you what, when we get over to the Dominican Republic, we should see a couple more. So let's see what that's going to look like then. Okay, so back into the cockpit. Just go set standard. Standard cross-check passing level 210. Now, check. Okay, and landing lights can go off since we're above the transition altitude now. And basically we don't expect any VFR traffic up here anymore. Okay, cool. So beautiful looking terrain up here. It really is. Now a couple of things about flying in the Caribbean. Now, in general, you are located in a very humid area, so you've got water temperatures of up to 30 degrees, sometimes even a little bit more in hurricane season. And obviously that means there will be a lot of energy in the entire atmosphere. And that energy is going to cause huge CVs that you will find there all the time. And those huge CVs are definitely something you want to avoid. Now, when you fly in Europe, you're flying around thunderstorms. You know, you take a couple miles distance and that's it. But you will probably remember that in the books, when you did your basic A2L theory, it always told you to keep 20 miles distance from the thunderstorms. Flying in the Caribbean, you absolutely want to do that. Normally, thunderstorms are avoided not by flying a heading, but by flying an offset. So you would tell ATC like request 5 miles offset and stuff like that. And when they approve that offset, then you can use heading select to fly within the approved offset area in order to circumnavigate any weather that you might encounter. There is a cool little trick that you can do in the Airbus FMS in order to lock that, and I believe it works in Boeing as well. So in Airbus, when you go to the flight plan page, then you take an offset. Let's say, for example, we had a CB straight ahead and we wanted to avoid that. Then we would request, for example, 20 miles right offset. You do that, but you do not press insert. By doing this, the aircraft now draws that amber line marking the maximum offset that you can take. And now, now you can go to heading select or to heading mode, and then you can navigate anywhere within that cleared area over here in order to avoid the thunderstorms. So that trick works really well. We use that in a lot of areas. However, you need to be a little bit careful using it over the Atlantic Ocean, because when you do this and then you go heading select and you don't fly close enough to the actual green line, so to the actual route in the FMS, then the inbound waypoint might not sequence. And when you fly, let's say, right here in the middle using heading mode, and you pass between the waypoint, then the waypoint doesn't sequence, and when air traffic control then requests a position report through ADS-C, and they request the position report, but the airplane would still respond with still inbound that waypoint that you long passed, that's going to cause huge confusion among the air traffic controllers. And for that reason, when you're flying on the Atlantic, you would actually do this in nav mode, mostly, unless you've got a really complicated weather system where you really got to slip through something, then ATC will just have to live with it. But normally like this, you can save quite a bit of hassle, and it's a pretty easy way, to insert that offset without actually pressing insert, just to mark the area on the nav display within which you're clear to navigate by air traffic control. So just remember, it's not request 20 miles offset, it's always request 220 miles offset, and that is basically going to provide you that. Now, when you do that via CPDLC, let me go ahead and explain for a second. So when you do this via CPDLC, which we don't have, what's that? Where's my CPDLC? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, strange. Never had that before on the Phoenix. Anyway, when you do that via CPDLC, it always says by default request weather deviation up to, and that's exactly what you do. Now, CPDLC in most Caribbean places is actually not available, so in most Caribbean places you will just have to do that stuff by voice, but it was just a little heads up there as to what you can actually expect. Now, general Caribbean weather basically is a hot and humid climate. Even in northern hemisphere winter, we've got up to 30 degrees down there, which is the reason why it's such a favorite place for holiday. But looking into the general weather conditions, if the weather forecast is not very, very good, then you can often expect local isolated thunderstorms which are eventually going to move through. And when that happens, you are basically looking at weather conditions that are going to give you an airport that might be blocked due to weather, and you really don't want to approach in a Caribbean thunderstorm. That is really a recipe for wind shears, for microburst, and for the entire thing. So if the weather is bad over here, you better respect that. Now, when you generally fly in the Caribbean area, then you typically have weather conditions which are close to what we see outside here right now. So you typically have things like scattered or few or broken clouds, but broken is rather rare. Normally it's scattered or few clouds, and then when there is a weather system in there, then that's really going to be, well, a bit like what you can see in the back there, local and isolated, but obviously in a much larger scale. I've seen CVs going up to flight level 500 in here, and I've actually seen a CV that was almost as big as an entire island that we could see, so you rather want to be on the careful side than thinking about weather. Now, looking into general conditions though, thunderstorms are very strong, rain showers are as well, and hold a huge potential for bad things to happen in aircraft. So for that reason, you want to avoid them. But the good thing is that they are normally rather short in their duration. So they either move through really quickly or they just stop really quickly. So most Caribbean showers are in the region between 15 and 30 minutes, unless you've got a really widespread bad weather system. But the typical afternoon, evening thunderstorms you're going to encounter in this area are rather short in their duration. For that reason, when there is bad weather forecast, half an hour of extra fuel is often going to give you the ability to sit out the thunderstorm. But if you take more like something like 1 hour, because when that stuff happens, you will also have a bunch of aircraft accumulating in the holds when that happens. So you, with an hour of extra fuel, you're always safe over here. Well, not always, but you get the general idea of the message I'm trying to relay over here. Now, apart from that, you also need to think about the alternates that are available. So many airports do not necessarily have a very good rescue and firefighting service capability. So not all airports can really be used. But something that is important to note over here is that if you've got a certain weather system that may or may not work in your favor, then chances are it might be a nearby airport as well. The Dominican Republic is a very good example for that. Let's return to the cockpit and have a look at the general charts over here. So let's just unlock that from the airplane position. So if you take the Dominican Republic, especially the favorite places here like La Romana or like Punta Cana. When you fly to airports like these, then it would often seem tempting just to take the next nearby airport and use that for your alternate. However, when the weather forecast is not that good, then chances are, number one, they might not be very accurate. So it might say, for example, in Punta Cana you've got good weather, but in La Romana you've got bad weather forecast. That basically gives an idea that the weather in La Romana or at the other airport might not be that good as well. So it's always a good idea to have a look at several different airports when you are doing your planning over here. Now, therefore, do consider taking a little further alternate. Like, for example, if we fly up to Puerto Plata up here, then we might want to take something on the other side of the island, like down here. You might want to go for something like literally anything that's a bit further away. I mean, Punta Cana is a good one, La Romana is as well, so these kind of places you might always just take. Right, so we are pretty much reaching Haiti over here. Let's have a look what that looks like from the top. Haiti is one of the places in the Caribbean that has the greatest poverty, so it's not a very good place to land at, and it also got huge problems with criminal activity, so that's unfortunately something that you need to consider, especially when you compare that the Dominican Republic and Haiti are located on the same island, and that border really makes a huge difference. What's the plane doing there? Probably doesn't like the frame rate and the time acceleration. So let's just go back to real time for a moment. Sim rate normal. Thank you. And all of a sudden we're stable again. Okay. Well, that works, I suppose. Well, I do suppose the simulator just needed a little bit of time to do some downloads for some of the scenery here, because I am running this one on the hotel Wi-Fi right now, and while that is generally not too bad, I can imagine it to be a little bit unstable, perhaps. Okay, so that much about flying across this area of Haiti. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of the approach preparation then for our approach to Puerto Plata in a few moments. So, right back inside. As you can see, 370 was a good choice. We still have plenty of space available here before we reach the coffin cone. Okay, this is really where an up-to-date weather forecast would come in handy, but, well, suppose we just gotta use this then. Okay, so from 0900, at the time I'm recording this, that's half an hour old, so wind calm, scattered clouds, and the QNH 1015, 21 degrees, with the dew point 21 as well. So that's a typical Caribbean scenario, that you've got temperature and dew point very close to one another. However, what would happen is the visibility would generally be reduced. So visibility is as good as we have them right now, where we can really see, well, the very far horizon. I mean, this is like 200 miles visibility. In the real world, you wouldn't have that in the Caribbean because of the high moisture of the air. That water just is difficult to see through, so general visibilities would be quite a bit lower than what we've got right now. I mean, you can even see the Earth's curvature over here, which is quite amazing, but in the real world, I have seen that I've seen that close to the Florida Keys, but only once. Apart from that, normal visibility is much worse than what it is here. Like, in the real world, I would basically expect that I could see somewhere over here or so, maybe to the coast of the island over here, and that's basically it. But anyway, the weather is still good for what we wanted to do with it, so we can start our approach planning. Basically, everything should be inserted over here already, which it is. So obviously, we are going to take the charts and cross-check all that stuff in a few moments. But in the meantime, let's just go ahead and grab some stuff over here. So Once again, small airport. You can see the parking chart is integrated onto the general airport chart here. Okay, then for the arrival, on-off 08 and on-off Zulu approach runway 08 over the mountains as well. Really beautiful approach, as you will see in a few moments, especially when you've got good visibilities like we should have right now. Okay, so don't need anything over here. NDPP 08 is in already. Superb. So 350 cabin radar descent. I'm going to increase that speed a little bit. Let's take 300 knots over there. That's looking better. Okay, so we said we've got 1015. Temperature is 21 and the wind is calm. What's it doing here? 0/0. Thank you, that's what I'm looking for. Config full, because config 3 is inopt in the Phoenix at the moment. And then 660 is going to be our minimums. Alright, perfect. So, go around then. Single engine go around. We need the MSA over here. 4,600. Well, going out to the ocean. Climbing to 4,000 actually. I'll tell you what, the initial part is all happening over water. Let's take 2,300 for our single engine acceleration. Like so. Okay, that's in, that's copied. What's it saying now? Extra fuel, 5 minutes. That's what I meant on the ground. We flew exactly what was in the FMS, and all of a sudden there's 5 minutes of fuel available extra. That's welcome to Airbus logic. That's how it works. Alright, cool. So that's basically pretty much everything entered. Then let's go ahead and do a couple of cross-checks of the arrival to make sure that we actually got everything covered. And then we can start our briefing. So, coming in down here from the south, over the mountains. Lovely rainforest down here, by the way. You can make some great excursions in the Dominican Republic, where you literally wouldn't think that you are, you know, close to beautiful beaches and oceans anymore, but literally in the midst of a rainforest. So it's really a very versatile country and certainly a place really worth visiting. Okay, so then let's go for it. So Bay Pilot 250 above 10,000. Then we got on to waypoint 316, 220 above 7,000. There is 315. Oh, here it is. 315, 250 above 10,000 is cross-checked as well. And then we've got 316, max 220 above 7,000, which is in here as well. And from there we fly towards Bayport, max 210 above 5,000. Looking good the way it is. Okay, then let's move on to the on-off approach chart. Now these checks are all done silently in the real world, by the way, so this is really just the stuff that you check silently for yourself, and when you're done with it, then you're going to do the briefing with a colleague. Okay, so waypoint 350. So first of all, Bayport, then we've got 350 above 5,000. Where's that from? Oh, that's from here. Okay. Then 351 above 4,000. Looking good. Then we move on to Caslo, 3,000. Thereafter a 3-degree glide. And that is in here as well. Very good. 6 miles, 1980. Here we go. 6 miles from the threshold, 1980. 4 miles, 1350, 2.5, 870. And that's all in here. Right, awesome. For the go-around then, waypoint 355 as an overfly point, which we have. Then on to 356, max 200 knots over there, and that's in as well. Thereafter 357 and on towards Emivu for a second approach, and if that happens we might probably just fly an approach into the other direction over the ocean, because that can be really beautiful as well. MDA 660 is in, and That's basically it. Let's go ahead and do some performance calculation then. Okay, runway 08, dry runway, refresh and apply. Let's see what our landing weight's gonna be then. 3.6 on the approach. So we are burning something like 600 kilos, 62.7 then. 62.7, low water brake, idle reverse, auto thrust on, flaps full, manual landing. Looks good. Right, excellent. So we can actually land. Alright, awesome. So that's pretty much this. Okay, so let's go for the briefing then. Just have a look at that awesome terrain outside. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that like really, really beautiful? Okay, so MSA 6,100, the highest within 25 miles, but approaching over the center of the island, the highest terrain we got is actually just above 10,000, so something like 13,000 over the terrain, and then later on we are going to be safe in 6,100 and for the go around over the ocean before we turn back to the terrain. Okay. Then our star is the Bepal 2 Sierra arrival for an on-off approach, runway 08, minimum 660. Go-around trajectory is a left-hand turn out, climbing 4,000 feet. Extra fuel and time. We've got 5 minutes. Okay, so the approach is going to be flown using final approach mode. Landing config full, stop margin about 1,000 and a bit meters. Reversers will be used for brake cooling. Auto brakes low, planned runway exit going to be to the right hand side, and I don't have any hotspots for the taxi in as it's really, well, not a busy place at the moment. Okay, threats for the arrival. Yeah, terrain and bird strike. Yep, I do agree. To mitigate for that, I'm going to use terrain display on my side. And for the bird strikes, we can't really do a lot. Just remember, when a bird strike happens on final approach, and if an engine does indeed quit, then we can continue without a change of configuration. And if we do actually have to go around, remember, if we're in config full, we're going to go config 3. If we're in any config other than full, we're going to go config 1. Right, and that's it. Any questions on the arrival briefing? No? Awesome. Let's take a small shortcut here and proceed direct to Bepal. Shortcuts are again something that you can expect in the Caribbean. Now, not across country borders, but definitely normally shortcuts can be expected. Again, very versatile terrain as we can see. Airport down there. Is there Puerto right now? I'll tell you what, let's have a very quick look into the annual chart, and then we will know. Yes, it is Puerto Falls. So in the real world, we'd probably not have gotten that shortcut, but for flight simulation purposes, it kind of works. In the real world, you would have probably gone direct over here, the border to the Dominican Republic, and then from there, you would fly to the star entry anyway. Now, stars are something worth mentioning as well over here. They do exist, but you plan for them. However, in many cases, you are not going to actually fly them. In many cases, you're just going to get direct to the initial approach phase, especially when there is no terrain around. So that's absolutely something for us to keep in mind, something that could happen. And if it does, well, then you basically are responsible for terrain clearance yourself. Now, remember, the pilot in command may never accept an ATC instruction that is not safe in terms of terrain clearance, so you always got to check for yourself anyway. But it is still a good thing to keep that in mind, that something like this might happen. So, For us today, what that basically means is a direct to somewhere over here is rather likely. So once we are across the actual border, I am going to insert just that. And we'll go direct to waypoint 316, which is located on the extend center line, which is something that I do judge to be rather likely in the real world as well. Okay, a couple of clouds coming up over there. Of course, clouds over the arrival. Oh well. It always happens when you expect the nice approaches. But let's see, are we across the borderline already? No, not yet. When we pass Beam Narben, that's where we overfly the border. Okay, so be it. Now, let's go ahead and start our descent anyway then. So, descent all flight level 290 blue. Now, in the real world, they usually have one big center en route, and then you've got, in many cases, even a combined tower and approach facility. But generally what you get is like a descent down to something like level 200 or so, and over there they're then going to hand you over to the tower or to the approach, and then you will receive further clearance, in many cases all the way down to the platform altitude already, and that is how they are going to complete these approaches. Now, as I mentioned, especially when you got terrain ahead, and there are a couple of rather high places in the Caribbean, like the Dominican Republic, and the mountains in the middle are definitely one of them. So if we have a look at the en route chart here, you can see NSA 13,500, 13,400, even a little bit further southbound when you take the hills over here, they are still about 3,000–4,000 feet high, so that is absolutely something to take care of as a pilot. Alright, so we're about to overfly the border, so let's go ahead and assume that we were released from Haiti, and that would send us direct to waypoint 316 in order to intercept the approach over there. Right, that's looking good. Direct to insert. Let's see, a little bit low on profile. That is kind of expected because we had a lot of speed restrictions, so by taking that direct, we now can fly our targeted 300 knots for quite a bit longer, thereby having more drag. Okay, so, and then as I mentioned, we'll probably get a descent down to, you name it, 5,000 for the start of the approach already. Okay, so, set QNH 2997. Cross check 31,000. Now, checked. Alright, and like that we can now simply let it go down. Okay, let's fasten the seatbelts already, and then we are on the way down. So, might as well just head right back to the outside in order to enjoy those views of the terrain a little bit more. As you can see, really versatile countries, and what I can personally really recommend is to take that quad tour in the mountains over here. Like, you get a quad bike and you basically ride through some dirt trails over there. That's a really lovely day. Now, unfortunately, the Caribbean isn't cheap, so you can expect to pay $100 per person for something like that. Likewise, if you want to swim with dolphins, $200 per person, something the likes. But then again, it is really, really beautiful country. Now, if you ever happen to get around the Dominican Republic, I can also recommend the trip to the island of Saona, which is located close to La Romana, and that is basically one of those textbook Caribbean beaches where, you know, where they record all the movies and stuff like that. Also, the Blue Lagoon is also located close by, even though it is a little bit less blue in the real world, but again, those are the beautiful Caribbean beaches that you have over here that are really worth visiting. Now, it would be interesting to do one of these with the general aviation aircraft here as well, just take a Cessna, fly along the beaches, see what they look like. Now, the riffs close to Punta Cana might be really worth visiting as well. And then again, I don't think Mexico is covered because Cancun got a couple of very, very nice grids as well. Especially flying along the hotel zone down there, it's just beautiful. And the good thing is you do that on many approaches. But apart from that, as you can see, some really rough terrain here, rainforest in the middle of the island. So that's something you do see quite a bit in the Caribbean, depending on which places you go to. Dominican Republic for sure, rainforest all over. And if it starts raining, then it really rains. Then it really, really rains. I've had a couple of days on layovers in Punta Cana where we had some of those thunderstorms, and you would not even go out anymore in order to go to the restaurant to catch dinner or something. You would just sit in your room and hope that the rooftop doesn't come down. Well, that's a little bit exaggerated, of course, but you get the general idea. It's really pouring cats and dogs when it starts raining. Alright, so in general, our approach is going to lead us over high terrain as well. That's why we got the 5,000 and later on the 4,000 restrictions on there. So we can expect a beautiful approach along the mountains for Puerto Plata. It's runway 08. Also, if you do fly to Puerto Plata and happen to have some layovers over there, if you want to go whale watching, that's also a really interesting activity you can do over there. You can see I'm flying to the Domrep rather often. Alright, so not much about it really. We're about to approach the actual transition altitude, so what I'm going to do is I will put those landing lights out already, because you can expect some VFR traffic along the northern part of the Dominican Republic, especially you know, those 6-seater turboprop aircraft cruising at altitudes where they can proceed VFR direct rather than taking the long IFR routes on the way inbound. So that's certainly something that we can consider. Okay, more drag. Yeah, okay, you can have a little. Let's give it some speed brake. Cabin, let's see, seatbelts are on anyway, very good. Alrighty, so again, we've just passed the rainforests over here, and you can see all of a sudden the terrain really turns and looks completely different. One of those things that are so versatile about the Caribbean that I really like. Now, fun story over here. In December, I first flew to Punta Cana, had a couple of days layover, then returned home 2 days later, flew to La Romana, 4 days layover, and from La Romana we drove northbound to the area, or to the general Punta Cana area, just spent a couple of days there. And there is only one road connecting the two places, and unfortunately it was a little bit rainy around that time, so the road was basically flooded. We could probably just have taken a boat and drove along the highway on the boat rather than taking the airplane. And that's something that you need to be aware of in the area as well. So if it's really pouring down, then don't expect the roads to be completely free. Better don't expect it. Okay, so the next couple of hills are coming up, and that is basically where we are going to start the approach over. We'll make that right-hand turn here in a few moments. Unfortunately, it looks like it's getting a little bit more cloudy right now, which is a bit unfortunate, but let's see, what's the latest weather looking like? Scattered 1700, scattered level 300. Well, that looks a little bit more cloudy than what the weather forecast actually suggests. Was one of the good things of weather in, well, general in the American side of the Atlantic is that they don't stop reporting the weather like 5,000 feet above the airport, but they basically report you the weather all the way up to level 300 and higher. So if you look at the weather over here, you can see scattered clouds 1700, but then the next layer is scattered in flight level 300, and that's probably just some cirrus clouds. So when I'm looking outside now, and I'm looking at this, then first of all, this is much thicker of a cloud coverage than what I would actually expect in the real world. I would just expect, maybe 3/8 of the sky or so to be covered in a low-lying cloud layer, 1,700 feet, with the tops maybe 2,500 feet or so. So what the sim is showing us over here is really more than I would expect. But let's see. If we're going to turn towards it in a few moments now, then let's see what it's really going to look like. Obviously, there are some mountain ridges over here, so depending on where the wind comes from, especially when it's coming from the sea and then pushing up the hills, then you've got a lot of very moist air that's being lifted, and any pilot will know what happens when you've got lifting of moist air packages. Right, they turn into thunderstorms. So that's something that you can observe in the Dominican Republic as well, especially when you've got those winds coming from the sea, which is where they usually come from, and then they push against the mountains on the island, and they rise over there. Then you often get some local thunderstorms in the area, which is something that you should certainly be aware of when flying in the area, especially when you're coming from the Atlantic side and you're flying into one of the airports that are located on the southern side of the Caribbean, or on the southern side of the island. Alright, so going through 10,000, the lights are on, the belts are on, got constraints, no need for LS. GPS primary, high accuracy, and the mode selector is in norm. Very good, let's go for the approach checklist, please. Provided that my iPad wants to open. Okay, approach checklist, bow wrap. QNH 29997. Seatbelts on, minimum Bravo 660. Auto brake, low, engine mode cell, norm. Approach checklist complete. Okay, so when you go into this, you do expect turbulence. So at this point, I would probably tell the cabin crew to sit down, because this is going to get turbulent. It already looks like there is a lot of power inside, so maybe this is one of those local orographic liftings. Because as we can see, there are definitely some hills down here. Perhaps that is exactly one of these scenarios where moist, warm air is being pushed against hills and coming up. But it certainly looks like it a bit, as this is pretty much following the coastline. Wasn't reported in the weather report, but yeah, they aren't always 100% accurate here either. Okay then, so let's descend with the procedure down to 3000, which is from where we're going to start the initial approach. Weather radar is active on the FO side. Now, with something like this, I would certainly go for weather on my side as well, but since it's inoperative in the sim anyway. You can see the hills over here, up to 3,700 feet. You should be able to see that on the chart as well. So if we take, for example, the VFR chart for a moment, look at that, here they are. Okay, so let's go on to the approach chart now, though. You can see it as well, up to 3,000 feet down here. And that's just what you've got on the charts. They are rising a little bit further even down south. You might as well encounter some rather strong rain showers when you enter clouds like this, so be prepared to put the engine start selected to the ignition position, as that might really become interesting when you enter some of those rain showers. They're certainly a lot stronger than what you're used to from your general European weather conditions. Okay, so cleared for the approach. Approach now, final blue. Let's dim the displays a little bit now that we're entering some of the darker areas. Let's see, can we see any of the ground already? No. Well, it's gonna come. Basically, we can go on off above the entire mountain ranges here, all the way until we're out of it. Okay, there we go. You can see a little bit. Wow. This is beautiful. This is really beautiful. Okay, so basically we can go on off all the way until we're down in, 500 AGL, or 660, I should say. And only over there we need to see something. But an approach like this is always worth them seeing. Such a spectacular one, at least when we're out of the clouds. Okay, speed final approach. Flaps 1. Speed checked. Flaps 1. Alright, and here we come. Look at that. Just look at that. Okay, so go around altitude 4000 set. Radio altimeter reading obviously is influenced by the mountains at 2600 feet over here. We are going to start configuring the airplane for the final approach. A little bit of speed brake surely can't hurt. Just in order to help it slow down a bit. Okay, 2500, gear down. Flaps 2. And back to the cockpit, no longer need those speed brakes. Okay, flaps 3. And flaps full. Landing checklist. ECAM memo, landing no blue. Landing checklist complete. Alright, and there is Puerto Plata Airport. As you can see, beautiful approach from either side. Going over the terrain over here, it's really an amazing approach to see. But on the other hand side, going over the sea is also really, really cool. It's really one of my favorite places in this entire area. And, well, for that reason, also the one I've chosen for the approach and for the shell-cast flight, of course. Again, really nice to see in the Caribbean as well. When you fly to places like Punta Cana, for example, or when you fly to Cancun, you've got these huge forestal areas where you just can't see anything but forest all the way to the horizon. And then, depending on where you are, I have places like this as well, which are really beautiful to look at as well. Alright. That much about it. Shall we go to the chance with manual flight then?
Above.
Check.
Minimum.
Continue. So, the power beat, again, a thing that's worth talking about in the Caribbean. They are often visible only really late on the approaches. Sometimes you just see them, like 2 miles out or something, because they just aren't that powerful. That's really something worth considering when you come in for a visual approach.
200.
.
100. 50, 40, 30, 10, 5.
Okay, and here we are. Spoiler reverse green decel. Manual brakes. Okay then, next exit to the right, and welcome to the Dominican Republic. Welcome to Puerto Plata. Again, beautiful airport that's really worth checking out. And, well, you are getting it for free, so do check it out anyway. Alright, vacating straight onto the main apron. But it is really cool to taxi next to those forests as well. So if you're coming here with a heavy, you vacate towards the end of the runway and taxi beam these forested areas. That's really, really impressive. So it is worth keeping an eye on temperatures. At 30 or more, you need to keep the flaps in the 1 position in the Airbuses. And that is something that you are absolutely going to encounter every now and then in the Caribbean, not to say most of the time. Right, after landing checklist. Radar and predictive wind shear off. After landing checklist complete. That's 53 minutes of flight time. Beautiful flight, isn't it? So we're going to park on one of the stands over there, which is a very short taxi time, which is also the reason why I just don't increase the thrust right now. I simply let the airplane roll. Not worth risking single engine taxi here. I'm simply going to keep both engines running. Okay, so that gate over there, that looks like it's got our name written on it. Especially because it's in front of that terminal and they did a really awesome job modeling it. Okay, Alpha 6. Oh, a little bit of tight turn there. Lights coming off. This is looking much better. Okay, no martial law unfortunately, but we can live with that. Well, that was a little bit harsh of a stop there. Let's take another couple meters. Especially because that jetway here can't move, so we got to park it exactly. I believe this is more or less it. We'll see in a few moments. So, parking brake is set, APU bleed coming on, and the engine's coming off. Cabin crew, all doors and park. Right, engine's running down, and 2 is below 20. Beacon light coming off. That's basically... Oh, they fired a slide, look at that! Good job! They fired a slide! Interesting. Welcome to Microsoft Flight Simulator. Okay, here we are. So, parking checklist, please. Parking brake on chocks. That's the brake set. Engines off, wing light off, fuel pumps off. Parking checklist complete. Alright guys, welcome to the Dominican Republic. Now, let's head outside and have a quick look into what it looks like checking this airport and how well I parked. Well, let's check that first. I want to know. Okay, so Phoenix app, give me the ground services and toggle jetway. Okay. Oh, that was connected. Interesting. Okay, toggle jetway again. Thank you. And we want after stairs as well, because that's where the cleaners are gonna come in. Alrighty. So, let's go outside. What is that camera drone doing again? Sometimes I really like, what on earth is it doing? But okay. Literally, what on earth is it doing here? I just want to have a look inside the terminal, please. And this is it. So this is what the terminal looks like. Pretty cool in my opinion. Pretty cool. Especially you can walk through everything over here. You've got the seating areas, you've got the gate areas. You've even got the restaurant areas in here. So Gaia really did an awesome job on doing these airports. Can't wait to fly a little bit more into here, especially to eventually with the long-haul airliner maybe at some point, hopefully. Well, as you can see, a really cool area here, and they've really done a good job with these airports. You could absolutely have sold them as a separate product, but they didn't. The only thing we gotta work on here is the docking of the jetway, but hey, that's gonna do. Alright guys, that's gonna be it for today's video. Last thing I'm gonna show you here is the interior of the tower, because as I mentioned, over here you can actually enter the tower, compared to other airports where you can't. So, not exactly sure what their reason was behind doing it this way or that way, but as you can see, lovely little Caribbean tower over here. So that's going to be it. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the World Update Caribbean. And let me know which routes of flight you have selected for your trips in here. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, do let me know in the comments below. And with that, I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.